Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where BJ is trying not to talk this week. He's finally decided to listen to doctor's orders and not move his jaw for 2 weeks, so he's going to have a couple weeks of silence. So it's just me again this week, another quick episode, just because I want to drop something in the feed. I just have a little bit of geekery, and we'll call it a week. I haven't been doing a ton, but I do have a couple things. So I went back to Hitman 2. And I've been working on the last piece of DLC. I started finally picking away at it. It's the Maldives, so it's like this island retreat. It's kind of interesting, but really just starting to mess around with the DLC level a little bit and getting excited for Hitman 3 because that's out in not later this year, but right when the year changes over to 2021. So I'm psyched for that. Outside of that, I've been playing a little bit more Valorant. So I've been taking turns with my son. He's actually playing more than I am, and it's been super fun to watch him get better at it. And then he wants to come talk to me about it and tell me about his strategies and what he's doing. And that's honestly my favorite part so far, is just hearing him get excited about it and then want to talk to me about a game. That's my favorite part of gaming, is talking to my friends and now my kids about it. So that's fantastic. One of the biggest things that I've done since the last recording was I beat Assassin's Creed 2 kind of start to finish. And I know I talked about this the last few episodes, where I'm going back and revisiting the Assassin's Creed series. 2 is interesting. I forgot how much I liked Ezio Auditore as one of the main characters and probably the most fleshed out character of all of Assassin's Creed, just because he has 3 games dedicated to him. And this is the first one chronologically and in the order that they released. So the whole first section of it is him in his late teens, when he's still kind of a kid living with his parents, but also kind of on the verge of adulthood. And that framing works really well as an onboarding ramp into all of the mechanics of Assassin's Creed. So there's street fights with rival houses that are just fist fights. There's sneaking into another, he has a girlfriend and he sneaks into her bedroom with her consent, very much so, but he sneaks in and there's a moment there where it's about sneaking and also climbing the building to get up to the window. There's tracking down someone who spurned his teenage sister. So he has a sister who's a teenager, and he goes and he gets to play the part of the big brother and kind of hey, don't do that to my sister. So it's all of this kind of teenage angst at the very beginning for the first chapter of, sequence, because it's Assassin's Creed, but first chapter of the game. And all of that is super interesting as an onboarding lens, and it works really well. I did notice a couple of the things, the controls and the climbing tech have improved a lot over the years since Assassin's Creed 2. That's probably where the game is the roughest, but everything else holds up really well. There's a couple nitpicky things, Venice is one of the locations, and it gets annoying because there's canals everywhere. You can't just run without eventually falling into a canal. So I think some of the later games have better settings and they build their worlds a little bit more able to just be run around in freely without having to worry so much about how you're traversing. But beyond that, it's a really good game. It still holds up surprisingly well. The whole thing is about Ezio from his late teens into his 20s and maybe even early 30s. It kind of happens over the span of 10 years, but it's never really said exactly how old he is. And the story is good. It's about him learning about the assassins and then becoming part of the assassins. And because of that, it's this great onboarding path for new players to learn about the setting and everything from scratch. You're just as easily able to pick up all of the key things about the series from Assassin's Creed 2 as you would be if you went all the way back to Assassin's Creed 1, which is really saying something. So that's cool. One of the other things was I kind of forgot that this game ends with you fighting the Pope. You get in a fist fight with the Pope because he's going crazy and you're arguing about alien artifacts. And it's really where the series decides to jump the shark and just not even try to be grounded in reality anymore. Not that it was too much in the first place, but once you get to alien artifacts and fist fighting the Pope, it's oh, okay. They're not afraid to just go way out with Assassin's Creed. And ever since then, they've never held back. They're not afraid to do whatever makes for a fun game, right? That makes it video gamey. So that was kind of the main thing I did for Geekery this week. I also wrote an article about it. I hadn't written anything on the Geekery blog, even though we have lots of contributors there, including BJ. I kept saying I would do it eventually, and I don't know, my time is hard to schedule. So it just worked out that I had a bunch of thoughts about it. So I wrote a big piece about Assassin's Creed 2 on the Geekery blog. So if you guys haven't actually gone to geektogeekmedia.com, now's a good time. You can go check out what I wrote. But I had fun writing that because I haven't done that style of writing in a while. So that was cool. Outside of that, I watched a couple things. I mean, I'm still watching Hamilton like consistently. I haven't, outside of the first time when I watched the whole thing just start to finish with my wife and my kids, I haven't actually watched it all in one sitting, but I've watched half of it. And then the next time I feel like Hamilton, I'll watch the other half. And then I just keep doing that. I've probably watched Hamilton start to finish like 6 times now. And yeah, so I'm still doing that. And I watched a couple other things. I watched Westworld Season 3, and it was all right. It was all right. It was okay. I also checked out Altered Carbon Season 2, and I felt pretty much the same about that. Like, it was okay, too. It was enough that for both of those, like, when the next season comes around, yeah, I'll take a look, but also I'm not super excited. Like, it's not like I can't wait for the next one. If that's where they wanted to end either of those series, it'd be like, yeah, okay, that's fine too. So not a huge impact on me, but they were interesting enough for some sci-fi TV. And then I watched a movie that I actually surprisingly liked. I didn't know much going into it except that it was some kind of space movie. So I watched Ad Astra, which came out, I think, like late last year, 2019. I know it's not too old of a movie. It's fairly recent. And it's a slow burn, and slow burn movies usually bore me, and I usually like tap out pretty early. But something about like this sci-fi and space, and it's like it's psychological, but also there's enough going on with like it's near future, so it's semi-grounded in reality. Like it's believable enough that like I bought into it, and even though it's kind of slowly paced, it's interesting the entire time it's being slow. And so I liked it a lot, so if you have a little more than 2 hours, I want to say it's like 2:15. I don't think it's quite 2.5 hours. But it was good. I like that movie a lot. So yeah, if you're a sci-fi fan and you have not seen that one and you want to see a space movie, Ad Astra was really good. I liked it. And then the other thing I wanted to mention this week is that Geektitude is back. They posted 2 episodes or maybe 3 episodes the last 2 or 3 weeks, but they are finally back from hiatus after Ray and Joe both honestly had to take some time off just because they had a lot going on with life. So they're back. And if you are subscribed to the feed, you have it already. But if not, go check out Geektitude because they are amazing. So yeah, pretty short episode this week. Because BJ is actually listening to doctor's orders and not talking, which... yeah, if you guys have listened to us for very much in the past, you probably know it's hard for him. He's trying not to talk for 2 weeks. So this is kind of my geekery. I don't know if I'm going to have something to talk about next week. Next week might be the very first week where we just have a week off and we just take a hiatus week. I know it's going to happen at some point, and maybe next week is the week. If I can think of something between now and then to put in the feed, I will. But if we don't show up in your feed next week, don't be surprised or worried. We will be back as soon as he's feeling better. Yeah, I'll try to think of something. I just know that my schedule is insane, so I can't record with somebody else. So it's going to be on me. We will see what happens. That's probably it for this week. Again, really short episode, but BJ will be back soon, and then we'll be back to normal. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. You can also find us on Slack, Discord, Reddit, all those good places. I blog at agreenmushroom.com. You can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter. I'm also on the Disney Forever podcast, where we watch and react to a different Disney movie every week. And BJ's on Twitter at Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. If you want to reach out to him and ask him how his 2 weeks of silence is going, because I would love it if everyone just poked at him a little bit and told him not to talk because it's so hard for him. And that would amuse me, even if it doesn't amuse anybody else. Professor Beej on Twitter. I would love it. That's it. I've been Void this week. BJ will be back soon. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
When toxic culture has you down.
When you're just looking to laugh and have fun.
Kick back and enjoy watching a video game.
Or just make some new friends.
It's time to visit the Geek to Geek Media Network, a community of podcasters, streamers, and bloggers.
Well, more of a family than a community.
All dedicated to geeking out about the things we love. Things like
video games,
Star Wars, comics,
movies,
K-pop,
Disney Plus,
Keanu Reeves,
New,
or whatever our community decides is the next best thing.
That's right. We have a great online community on Slack and Discord where we chat about our weekly geekery with listeners and viewers.
And each other.
Yep, and each other in real time, and we can't wait for you to join us.
So come check us out at geek2geekmedia.com.
And escape toxic fandom for something much more...
Keanu?
Yes, Keanu.